Welcome to Aircrew Interview. I'm Mike and your host. In this episode we chat with Alf Ingesson-Thoor on the Saab 32 Lansen and AJ 37 Viggen. He talks about his training, operational squadrons and includes some great stories from both types. I also want to thank our sponsor Laco Watches, who were one of the original companies to produce pilot watches for the Luftwaffe during World War II. They produce both A and B dial watches in different sizes to suit all tastes, which adopt the look of times gone by but still satisfied modern demands. You can check out all their models and products via www.laco.d. Thank you. So Alf, when did you first become interested in aviation?
Well, I am born 30k from one of the main fighter wings in Sweden, here in Malmslätt, the place where we are right now. And I had Swedish Air Force aircraft, especially the D-29 barrel, over my head all the time. So I was like a chicken, followed my mother. That means I was following those barrels into the Air Force. And I can't remember how old I was, but say 4 or 5 years. And
so what year did you join the Air Force?
1967 as a student pilot, but I joined the Air Force 1963 as a, what you call it, air cadet. Mm-hmm. And also during 2 summer seasons on different air wings. Mm-hmm. So, and also I started with support from the Air Force flying gliders 1965 here in Linköping. And at that time the Air Force supported young guys with 50% of the cost if you start to fly gliding to make them interested to go to the Air Force.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of the basic aircraft you started training on. What were they and what were they like to fly?
I flew the Saab Zafir, SK-50, SK-50, which as the first one. It's a nice one, and actually I have one of my own still. And you start to fly that one down at the Air Force Academy, Ljungbyhed. Mm-hmm. Ljungbyhed was around since 1926 up to still going on. Mm-hmm. And you fly the prop machine for about 40-50 hours. Then you convert it to SK-60 Saab 105. Mm-hmm. And after 1 year flight training, you took your exam. Mm-hmm. Before that, you had to go to put like a school to, if you don't have an exam from the, let's say, high school, you had to learn more about mathematics and such things. So you went to a special pre-flight school for 1.5 to 2 years. Mm-hmm.
So what was your first aircraft you went onto after your training?
My first aircraft was Saab 32 Lansen at the F-17 wing down in the southern east of Sweden, Ronneby. Mm-hmm. And from the beginning I was planned to go to the Dragon, but I wanted to go to the Lansen. And I made an exchange with one of the guys who were told to go to the Lansen, and he wanted to go to the Dragon and vice versa. So we made an exchange there.
So yeah, let's talk about your first thoughts of the Lansen. What did you feel?
If you're coming from Saab 105, which are quite low, it's like sitting with your bottom in the air surface, like so to speak. And if you go to Lansen, it's huge, it's high, it's a long nose in front of you, and it's not side by side, it's a tandem, and also another generation. Saab 105 is a generation from 60s to 70s, you can say. Mm-hmm. Lansen is the early 50s. Mm-hmm. It affects the instruments, the sticks and everything, how to handle it. Mm-hmm. So it's like going backwards in that respect, but also it was very, very fascinating to that huge aircraft. And we flew 3 to 4 hours in duel. Then we went on solo.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the actual aircraft. What was it actually designed for the Swedish Air Force?
Lansen was designed as a ground attack fighter. It was made for wearing bombs, rockets or missiles to hit especially boats, invasion boats coming from the east, and also forces on the ground and all supplies. So we have different types of operation profiles. 4 aircraft, 8 aircraft on bombs, heavy bombs up to 600 kilos, 500 kilos, and rockets, and also those missiles. And also day and night. So we flew those targets, made those missions with weapons in, let's say, all type of weather, day and night. And the aircraft was a 2-seater. We had a navigator in the back seat,
right.
who with a radar.
It looks very small from this.
Yeah, it's a little bit tiny, but it's worked quite well. So as a pilot, you were on the steering machine, so to speak. The navigator made all the work.
So let's talk about some of your ground training. What was it like coming from those trainer aircraft to frontline aircraft?
When you started to fly the Lansen, you went straight onto a sharp squadron, which were converted to, let's say, learn new students to fly for a couple of months before you join the real training for combat. And so you went into a society which are quite another by what you are using at the Flying Academy, where you were a student and a lot of teachers. Here you became a very nice part of a gang, and everybody was keen to learn to fly, and the military stuff by saluting and such thing is not that very important there. What's important is what you do and how you're working with other together. The social life is important, but also the demands. You have to prove quite early that you can manage those aircrafts. You don't have too many hours to try. If you're failing, you're out.
Yeah.
So it's, you had that pressure on you, especially during the time of the flight school. When I came to the flight school in 1967, I believe we were about 83 students, and we were 21 who took exam later on. So it was a big dropout.
Yeah. So can you remember your first flight in the Lansen?
My first flight in Lansen was with my instructor, a guy called Stig Benjaminsson, very nice guy. And I remember to taxiing out, you were feeling like sitting on a big horse or something, and the taxiway seems very tiny, very small. And you took off with a reheater. The reheater in Lansen is not that very effective, but you could, at least you could feel it. And then come up in the air with other speeds than you're used to, and you're also flying with hydraulic rudders and sticks. And this is not what you are used to from the flying school. And all those instruments, which are, you have to look everywhere, and so on. And also the landing, which is quite different. It's not like today, so you just take the gear out and touch down. Here you have the maneuvering, the stabilizer, the flaps, the air brakes in different position. It takes about 1 minute from you decide to make yourself clear for landing to everything is out and working and such.
You don't think that, like, compared to modern day aircraft?
Yes.
Gears down now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a very lot of things to do. But after you made the first landing, you found out, okay, that was okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the aircraft was alive and I was alive, and the instructor was out of the hospital in a couple of days, so, well, just joking. But then we had another flight with the instructor for only touch and go, and some flights for maneuvering crew to stall and low speed and such things. Then we went solo. The first solo was an navigation trip around the southern part of Sweden on 3,000 feet or something.
That must have been pretty special.
Yeah, you felt, I was only, just had been 20 years old, so it was amazing.
Quite young, yeah. So can you talk us through some of your actual training on the aircraft for the squadron you were on? What kind of role were you as a pilot? Well,
after you have done your combat training and became efficient enough to be in the squadron as a full pilot, you always are a wingman. We operate in 4 or 8. That means number 1 was a squadron leader, number 3 was a group chief, number 5 was another group chief, and number 7 was another group. Number 2, 4, 6, 8 was wingman.
Right.
And as the first 2 years, you always stick to your wingman. You put your teeth in his wingtip and don't leave him, so to speak. So every time you fly without a wingman in front of you, you feel a little bit afraid. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? So when after 1 or 2 years, you expand to be a chief for the pair, and you come in new students, which you will have behind you. So you're accelerating up in the hierarchy, so to speak. But it takes quite many years before you are allowed to be a group chief. Group chief, I mean chief of 4 aircrafts.
Yeah,
at your own.
Big responsibility, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about its handling characteristics. What was the strengths and weakness of the aircraft?
The strength was it could take the load that was expected. It could endurance on 1.5 hours or something, and it was the strength was that you had a navigator at the time. The weakness was it was not supersonic. You could fly supersonic, and we did it a couple of times during the initial training. That means you climbed up to 38,000 feet. You make a half roll, split S, put you down, straight down, fully afterburner, straight down, and after a while you can feel the stick starting to live its own life. You're trying to keep it still, and after a while you saw in the back mirror a little notch there which contained, now you are supersonic. You can see 1.01. Then you take brakes out, take off the engine, and you pull as much as you can, and you level out on 5,000-6,000 meters, 15,000 feet or something.
It's strange because you always think an aircraft with an afterburner will be able to go supersonic in a straight line, but I think this is the first aircraft I know of.
I mean, if you go to another version of Lansen, which I flew much later, the fighter version of Lansen had the same engines as the Dragon. And they could go a little bit faster, even though the engine was much stronger. But it's not the engine, it's the aerodynamic which puts a limit for it. So every time you come above 0.92, it started to put the nose down, and it was a little bit riding a horse that wants to go back to the stable all the time. So as soon as it got down to below 0.92, it was quite easy to fly. But with the attack Lansen, you very seldom exceeded 1,000 km per hour. That means 0.9. Normally with load, we had a speed of 0.78, 0.8 with reheater.
And what kind of weapons would it carry at this point when you were flying it?
We had bombs from 120 kilograms up to 500 and 600 and 250 kilograms. We have rockets, different powered with different type of things, from 13.5 centimeters up to 18 centimeters. We have guns, 4 guns, 20 millimeters, and we have Robot 04, a Swedish-built sea robot, which were launched about 30 km away on low level. Then it flows itself to the target. It was a very, very strong one. And that one specific Robot 04 was also developed for the Viggen later on in a new version.
So would you say it was a capable aircraft at this time to do its role it was intended to do?
It did its work. It did its work,
Yeah. And let's talk a bit about the cockpit. Was it cramped in there? Because from looking, as we said, it looks pretty tight in there. Was it?
Well, it's quite roomy. It's you can have flowers and water them on the side. It's very big, like this, but it's not very. It's not narrow, so to speak. If you go to a Dragon, it's much more narrow.
Oh yes.
In the back seat, a little bit more narrow, but otherwise you're quite comfortable in it.
Yeah.
And you have two ejection seats, of course.
Oh, you needed it probably, yes.
Yeah, I used it once.
Yes, we're going to get onto that. So, but you also did some display work. Can you tell us about this?
About my display flying?
Yeah, and this.
Well, I started to fly displays 1981 with the prop machines, and also a little bit with the Viggen, but mostly with Lansen was from 2001, and that was a fighter version. And the fighter version was at that time out of service. It's only operated as a vintage aircraft.
Okay.
So I flew from 2001 to 2013, about 8 to 10 shows per year. And as I said before, it's quite different between the attack Lansen and the fighter Lansen because engine is so much powered.
Yeah.
It's very nice aircraft to fly. It's easy to fly, and it's everybody say every aircraft is a pilot's aircraft, and well, it's easy to fly even if it had its disadvantage in some kind. So display flying has been part of my life in the Air Force in 1981 up to 2013 as a military pilot.
So I was gonna ask you a memorable story, so we're gonna talk about your ejection. Let's talk about that story, and can you share it with our viewers?
Well, it was a Monday. We should go out with 4 Lansen on a mission from Ronneby out in the Baltic Sea, about a couple of minutes, 30 minutes or something, then back in for flying some rockets on our target. After take-off, in let's say about 5-6 minutes, we were on low level, about 100 feet or something. I just felt that my engine stopped, and I was hanging in my straps, and my pulse went from 80, 90 up to 290. I don't know. My first reaction was to climb to gain height, because you need height if you have to jet from this aircraft. And I started to make some proceeding to relight the engine, which failed. And when I come on top of my track, it was about 700 meters, the speed was down to 400 kilometers per hour, which is it's initially been 600 kilometers per hour, and 400 km is a recommended speed to eject, and nothing happened with the engine. And now I started to descend down to the sea again. I decided to, okay, that's it. So I decided to eject, and I told that on the radio, and one of the guys was just 100 meters to the right of me. When I decided to eject, I took my left hand to the handle for ejecting the canopy, which you had to do in this aircraft. And I turned the handle down, and nothing happened. I was staring down at my hand when I was looking at the little lamp which are used for lighting up your map during night. And this one is situated very close, so I dropped that lamp, took the right handle, ejected the canopy, and then I ejected out of the aircraft. And a big bang, and I saw myself, my feet up against the blue, and a lot of paper around me, which came from my knee blocks. And then some kind of a little shock. I was hanging the aircraft in the parachute. And I saw my aircraft nice and gently diving into the sea. And then I landed in the sea, and I was picked up after about 30 minutes by a helicopter.
Make sure you head over to www.laco.d to check out all their watch models and products, and also read up about the history of their awesome original pilot watch. Thank you. So then you got posted to the Viggen. How did this happen?
Well, we was planned at my wing, which at the time was F6 wing in Karlsborg, to be the last squadron who flew Lansen. And in early 1978, we were converted to Viggen. After 6 weeks of theoretical work, technical education, we had 2 flights in the 2-seater with instructor. And they came from F-15, where they normally trained the originally coming direct from the flight school students. But they seemed us so experienced, so we got 2 sorties, a little bit more than 1 hour in the Viggen. Then they went home with 2-seater, and then we had 8 1-seaters out on the grid. Okay, guys, let's see what we can do. Then we started to fly. Of course, we had instructors together for the first 6 months. And the big difference, that was the speed and the acceleration. I mean, after takeoff, if you go with full afterburner, 3 steps afterburner, from that you release the brakes until passing 33,000 feet. It's about 1 minute 30 seconds, 1 minute 40 seconds.
Wow.
It's the same as if you're going in a Boeing 737.
Yes.
When you take in the landing gear with a Boeing 37, you are on 33,000 feet. And also the acceleration, it's enormous. I spent almost 2,000 hours in the Viggen, and I could never get used to the fantastic acceleration. It was so amazing.
So how did the aircraft handle?
From the beginning it was a little bit difficult because of the delta wing. Every time you turned, it sounds like you were having a stall warning, and because it's a little bit shaking. And also the stick, which your steering stick, it's a handbrake. Every time you turn and you take load, it's the speed disappears, so you have to have a lot of reheat, a lot of afterburner on to keep the speed when you're turning a lot. But it turned quite well, and it was quite easy to fly, especially during takeoff and landing, comparing to Lansen. To just turn the handle gear down, and everything was fit. Flaps, everything comes out automatically. And you also have a reversal modification or installation at Viggen, which you can pre-set in the air, and after you're touching down, you just put down the nose wheel and put full power, and you will stop in 400 or 500 meters, 1,500 feet or something.
So did you ever do one of them, you know, you see them landing on the motorways or
Yeah.
What was that like?
It's what, like, I wouldn't say it to compare it to landing on a air carrier, because that was a little bit to exaggerate, but for the first time when you're landing on that strip, 800 meters with forest on both sides, it feels very, very tiny. And you're coming down with 260, 280 k's, let's say 130 or 40 knots, and touching down and down wheel, nose wheel down and full power, and you're shaking and everything and trying to be steady. It's a bit amazing. Then you get used to it, but we didn't make so many landing out in the forest. I think I had done at the most 50 or something. And I also was one of the pilots who were in the test for, can we do this in dark? And myself and two other guys, we were down in Småland on a strip like this, and tried first in dawn and then in dark. But we couldn't, we made it, but it was too difficult. And the problem wasn't to touch down, the problem was when you put down the nose wheel. The nose digs down and you only see a spot of light a couple of few meters in front of you, but you lost all of feeling what we were doing away. So one of the guys, he was sliding from left to right a couple of times, and then he decided, okay, we skip it during night.
Right, yeah. So it was like getting used to the reverse thrust, I mean, coming from Lansen.
It was very nice because he was never afraid of icy runways or something. And also, if you took the wrong way on a taxiway, you can backwards and something. But normally, it was used not every day. It was used for training, it was used for short runways, and also when you don't used to hit the brake, just put out the handle for reversing, just close the gaps and instead of using normal brakes. So it's,
and what models did you fly over the Viggen?
I flew the Attack AJ, the SH and the SF. I did never fly the fighter version.
And did you ever conduct any DACT?
Of course. I mean, the name AJ stands for Attack and Jakt, attack and fight. So our role as a fighter pilot was to defend ourselves, but also help to go for other bombers from in a war situation, but not fighter to fighter. But we also trained that a lot. So we were, let's say, we were second-hand fighter pilots from being nothing of that part. But you couldn't compare us to the guys who flew the fighters. But we were quite good at it sometimes, I think. And we trained it quite a lot, so we did that.
So yeah, did you ever work on any like large exercises with other nations?
We had at that time, during the 80s and 90s, a big exercise called Focus every year. And then we had also the Air Force exercise every year. So we had 2 or 3 every year. That we were, from our originally wings, we flew out the aircraft to other airfields around Sweden, with 4 aircraft on each airfield, and they were quite long taxiway. You could taxi for miles to hide your aircrafts. We spread them out, so to speak. And then when we started, we had to join everybody together in some certain points to be a big group before we made our attack or our mission. Then back to maybe the same base. Maybe went down for a quick refill of fuel with the engine running, and then we went back to our original base. And sometimes you can start on one base, land on another, and start from that one, land on another, and then third time you are back on the original base, depending on what the purpose was. And one thing which is very common with Swedish aircraft is that they are very easy to turn around. From you come down with a Viggen until it's fully loaded, fully equipped with fuel and everything, it's less than 10-15 minutes.
Wow.
Made by conscripts. If you take NATO, the Americans, it takes them hours.
I think the Swedes are definitely good at that.
But on the other hand, the Americans, they just put out another aircraft instance.
Exactly. So what kind of weapons would you carry?
We had originally rockets, 13.5. We have bombs, 120 kilograms, and missiles, Robot 04, Robot 17, which are sea missiles and made for sea work. And we had a Swedish robot called Robot 05, and that missile, you launch it and you steer it with a little handle until hit, then you had to turn away. And then we also had Maverick.
Ah, yes.
We became the Maverick after a couple of years.
So do you have any memorable stories?
For Sidewinder we had also.
Sidewinder, yes, yes. So do you have any memorable stories from flying the Viggen?
I can tell you one story which is a little bit shame to say, but it's also a little bit interesting maybe. It's many years ago. We had an exercise up in the north. We've been flying for the whole day and been flying 2 or 3 missions during night. It was very good weather, and we landed about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were told to go to bed and have some rest, but they decided to cut the exercise, so everybody go home to home base, and they asked, can you fly, you guys, can you fly your aircraft back home? It's only 30 minutes, 750 km or something, down to F6 Karlsborg. And we said, okay, we can do that. And in the sequences, the aircraft was ready. Pilots took the aircraft just up to 30,000 feet and went down to Karlsborg. And when my airplane was ready, I stepped into it, took off, climbed to 33,000, took my course to Karlsborg, turned on the autopilot, and fell asleep.
Oh no.
And after a while I heard someone calling, Fox 35, Fox 35, do you read? And I was thinking, what the hell is Fox 35? What kind of a bitch answer on the radio? Fox 35. Then I wake up, Fox 35, that's me. Okay, Fox 35, do you read? Sorry, I had some problem with the radio, sorry about that. Then I was very, very much awake. I had slept for about 10 to 12 minutes.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Oh, wow. So how many hours did you get on the Viggen, and did you enjoy flying it?
I have almost 2,000 hours, almost exact 2,000 hours.
Brilliant.
I started to fly in 1978, and then my last flight was in 2002, I believe.
2002.
And after I became a psychologist, which I was offered to do in 1989, I still flew it up till 2003.
Well, it's certainly one of my favourite aircraft, so I'm very jealous of you for flying it. So, you also, briefly tell us, you also flew helicopters for some while.
Yes, well, as an aviation psychologist, I had the opportunity to be a psychologist. The reason was that the Air Force thought it was okay, we have doctors who can fly, but we have no psychologists that can fly. So I was a test, the first one, who went to the university to become a licensed psychologist. I went to university in Lund for five years, then I worked at a hospital. But I was still flying all the times.
Yeah.
And one of the first customers I got, that was helicopter pilots, which were some kind of neurotic stress and such thing. So they said, okay, do you like to start to fly helicopter? Then you know more about it, of course. So I was trained for a helicopter pilot. Then I flew simultaneously aircrafts in the Air Force and in the Army, which later became the Air Force.
Yeah.
I flew the BU-105, the Jet Ranger and the UX-300 for about around 1,000 hours or something.
Maybe.
And that was amazing. I mean, flying around with Mach 0.9 low level, that is very nice, but flying helicopter, you can land everywhere, and that's something. I thought I knew Sweden up from the up after all these years, but I saw quite new Sweden from the helicopter.
So, Alf, do you have any hobbies?
Well, my hobbies is more or less some kind of flight history. I'm writing books together with another guy, Göran Jakobsson, about the Swedish flight safety history. And I also fly aerobatics together with some other old pilots every summer. Then I have a family, 3 children, 6 grandchildren, 2 cats and a dog. So it's
busy life.
Busy life, yeah.
So, favourite aircraft you've ever flown?
The one I'm sitting in at the moment, I used to say, but I would say the Piper Super Cub.
Wow, okay.
I love that. Saab Sapphire. And of course I'd say Viggen as well.
Yes, of course. One you wish you could have flown that you haven't?
I would like to have flown the Dragon, actually.
Okay, yeah.
I only had a couple of flights in the back seat in it.
So how many hours altogether do you have, and did you enjoy your time in the Air Force?
In the Air Force, total hours is 11,300 something. In the Air Force, a little bit about 8,050 or something. That contains helicopter and fighters and trainings. I was a couple of years as an instructor at the Flight Academy as well. So I'm very happy to have been flying so much.
So Alf, thanks very much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.